BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my November 2018 mid-month wrap-up. So these are all the books that I have read from the 1st of November to the 15th of November. There are 14 books in total. In this video I will not be doing any stats or anything at all like that. I do that at the end of the month when I do my end of the month wrap-up. But like I said, 14 books, so let's jump in and get started. The first book, I'm embarrassed enough to say, I messed up on my month-end wrap-up back at the end of October because I read 2 Julia Quinn novels back-to-back. And unfortunately, I talked about the wrong one. The one that I had actually finished was On the Way to the Wedding, which was book 8 in the Bridgerton series. And it wasn't until November, I think it was the 1st or 2nd of November, that I finished Just Like Heaven, which is the one that I talked about in that video. So again, my apologies, but I will just mention it again here quickly in case you are new to my channel. The first book that I finished in November was Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn. It is a historical romance Regency novel. It is book number 1 in the Smythe-Smith Quartet, narrated on audio by Rosalind Landor, and it was published in 2011 by Avon HarperCollins. Average rating of 3.94 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4 stars. This was really cute. The Smythe-Smith Quartet series is a offshot or a spin-off, if you will, of the Bridgerton series. They are 4 cousins who have a musicale, and every year this musicale is put on, and it's kind of the butt of the joke, like throughout the Bridgerton novels, that these are horribly bad and none of the girls know actually how to play instruments. It's a really, really fun book. It was really cute. It was about 2 people who were friends, had been friends since they were kids. Our male lead, Marcus, was best friends with our female leads, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head because it's different and interesting, but I'll write it down here. He has been friends with her brother, with her brother since they were kids, so they've known each other since they were young. And then the brother was exiled for various reasons, and he asked Marcus to please look after his sister. And a romance kind of, goes from there as they meet up again as adults. It was really, really cute. Classic Julia Quinn style. I absolutely recommend it. The next book that I finished was Murder on Ice by Carolyn Keene. This is a YA mystery, of course. It is book number 3 in the Nancy Drew Files series. This is the series that was published in the 80s. This is one of the books that I refer to as the Back to My Childhood books. I'm rereading through both Nancy Drew series, the Nancy Drew Files and the original Nancy Drew series. I'm reading back through the Babysitter's Club and Sweet Valley High, so these have been really fun. This was published originally in 1986 by Simon Pulse. Sorry, I've got my notes here. Average rating of 3.67 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Nancy and her friends Bess and George, and her boyfriend Ned have all gone to Vermont to go on a skiing weekend. And of course, mystery just follows Nancy wherever she goes. There is a series of accidents that are happening, and they could be potentially deadly accidents. And yeah, it was a fun story. I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it. It's meant for, a younger reader. These are rereads for me, of course. But contrary to the title, there is no actual murder that takes place within this book. But it was still an enjoyable read, and I liked it a lot. The next one is Out of Uniform by Catherine Mann. This is a romantic suspense novel. It is book number 14 in the Wingman Warrior series. Harlequin romantic suspense novel number 1501. Again, for those of you who might be new, the Harlequin imprints are numbered. It doesn't mean anything. You don't have to read them in any kind of order like that. It's not like they're part of a series, but I do like to mention it just because it's kind of fun. I like to keep track for myself mostly. Originally published in 2008 by Harlequin. Average rating of 3.90 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 4 stars. This one was interesting. Again, it is book 14 in a series, but I read this one outside of the series and was not lost or confused in any way. It's about a woman who has amnesia, and she kind of gets ditched at a hotel, and she meets the owner of the hotel, who also happens to be a Air Force mechanic, but he's on a medical leave due to an injury he sustained. So over the course of the novel, the two of them are she's trying to find her memory, and the two of them, of course, develop a relationship. It was really interesting, very action-packed, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next up is Reunited with the Cowboy by Carolyn Arson. This is an inspirational contemporary romance. Book number 2 in the Refugee Ranch series. Love Inspired novel number 914. Love Inspired is a is part of the Harlequin brand. It is their inspirational line. And it has an average rating of 4.24 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is the story of a woman who comes back to her hometown to help plan her sister's wedding. And she runs into her old high school flame, who married another friend of theirs after she had left town many years earlier. She left town to pursue a modeling career. And she kind of not fell into a bad crowd, but she had a very difficult relationship with her now ex-husband, and she's kind of dealing with the aftermath of that. And the two of them, of course, her and the ex, so it's a second chance romance, you know, kind of find each other again. And she agrees to help him out, look after his young daughter. And yeah, it was a really cute story. I mean, you know, nothing that jumped out, and I would say you have to read this one. But if you enjoy a good second chance romance, this one was highly enjoyable. Next up is It's in His Kiss by Jill Shalvis, a contemporary romance novel. Book number 10 in the Lucky Harbor series. This was narrated on audio by Sunila L. Adder, and it was published in 2014 by Grand Central Publishing. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.20 stars. I gave it 4 stars. I loved this one. I mean, it was Jill Shalvis. I adore Jill Shalvis in just about everything that she writes. The Lucky Harbor series is a great small-town contemporary romance series. This is the first one I've read in this series, and I don't know why it has taken me this long to read it. One of my plans for 2018 that I've mentioned, or 2019 that I've mentioned before, is I do participate in the Stacking the Series challenge, where you have to pick book series and you're kind of reading through them, and you go from, like, you know, a 10-book series to a 9-book series and so on. I am going to do a video in December talking about a separate video talking about the Stacking the Series challenge and which series I've actually picked for 2019. But this one is definitely going on the list. I want to read the first 9 books in the series because I really did enjoy it. So it's about a woman who is kind of running from her past in a way, and she ends up in Lucky Harbor, which is in Oregon, I believe. It's on, no, maybe it's California. It's on the West Coast, and she runs into Sam. And he is a sexy, grumpy surfer, is what she refers to him as, the SGS. And, of course, there's a relationship that develops. The both of them are harboring things from their past. It was really, really good. A lot of great witty banter, a lot of great characters. Classic Jill Shalvis. I absolutely loved it. Next up is one that I hadn't planned on reading. This was not on my TBR at all for any, you know, for the month of November. But I did participate. It's now completed. They run it about 3 or 4 times a year. It's called the Pass the Parcel Challenge on the Romance Readers Reading Group on Goodreads. And you get put into a team, and every week you're given a different prompt. And some of the prompts, a lot of the prompts actually, are picking books from Listopia on Goodreads. So if you go on, you know, if you look at a book on Goodreads, if you scroll down the page, you'll see that some books are part of lists. And so you need to pick books from those lists. So this one wasn't from a list, but the prompt was to read a book set in the UK. And I actually had, other than the It's in His Kiss, which I had read earlier in the month, I did not have any books set in the UK on my TBR. So I had to go hunting. So I do have a subscription to the Audible romance package, and I kind of went through there. I looked at Regency novels, and I looked at ones that had a very low, essentially a low page count, because I wanted to get a book done quickly because I have a very full November TBR. And I found this book. And it's called Lady Fortescue Steps Out, and it's by M.C. Beaton, also known as Marion Chesney. This is a historical fiction / romance. It's not a full-on true romance novel. There is a romance in there, but that's not the basis to the story. It is book number 1 in the Poor Relations series. It was narrated on audio, which was just icing on the cake, by Davina Porter. And if you are unfamiliar with that name, but you do listen to audiobooks, she's the one who narrates the Outlander series, which is just brilliant. This was published originally in 1992 by Rosetta Books. Average rating of 3.72 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4 stars. This one was one that I was not expecting to enjoy. It was only like a 4-hour-long audiobook. Oh my gosh, you guys, it was so cute. It was about this older woman named Lady Fortescue, and she is what they call the poor genteel. And essentially they have titles, they may own property, but they have nothing else. In her case, she has 2 servants, but they only stay there because they have nowhere else to go. She has sold off all the furniture in her home. You know, they are scraping by with what they can, you know, even steal. You know, and she runs into this man, this older gentleman, a colonel, I believe, Colonel Sandhurst, I think was his name. And they develop this plan that they are going to get others like them in their same situation. And they're all going to live together and pool their money. Well, then that happens, but then they decide to open a hotel. The Poor Relation Hotel, which is where the series title comes from. And it was delightful. Like I said, there is a romance in there. It is with two of the younger, and when I say younger, I don't mean, you know, children. Like Lady Fortescue is in her 70s. So two of the people in their 20s develop a relationship, and it's super duper adorable and really cute, and I loved it. I am definitely going to read through the rest of the series. I do believe all of them are available as part of the Audible romance package. The next book that I finished was A Marriage Made in Italy by Rebecca Winters. This is a contemporary romance novel. Harlequin romance number 4388, narrated on audio by Antoinette Levinci, or Levincia, I believe. Published originally in 2013 by Harlequin. Average rating of 3.44 stars on Goodreads. This one I gave 3 stars to. I did not love this one. And this was a finalist for the Rita Awards, which are the like the romance genre book awards. And I'll be honest and say, in my personal opinion, I don't see how. It was a cute enough story. It was about a woman who was adopted and finds out that her mother was from Italy, and she decides to take her vacation. She goes to Italy to try and find information about her birth family. And while she's there, of course, she develops a relationship with this guy. It was one of those insta-love kind of things, marriage of convenience. They're not usually my favorite cliches in romance, but I mean, it was enjoyable. It wasn't a horrible book. I did listen to it on audio. It's available from the Audible romance package. What really kind of set this one over the edge, because I did originally have this up until the end at about 3.5 stars. What dropped it down was the ending was so sugary, sweet, and cheesy. Like, it was just, you know, like everybody's pregnant, that kind of an idea. And that never sits well with me, you know. So, not that I have a problem with people who have babies. I mean, I think that's fantastic. But that doesn't have to be the end goal in every romance novel. And the fact that it was just like, it was her sister-in-law, it was some other family member that I don't want to give anything away in case you do want to read it. Again, it wasn't a bad book. Rebecca Winters is a great author. I just didn't like, there were certain aspects of this book I just didn't care for. The next one was Annette Galley Reid. And this was Exclusive and A Touch of Heaven by Samantha Chase. This was a 2-in-1. It was an anthology. So 2 of her books, Exclusive and A Touch of Heaven, are being re-released as an anthology together. Contemporary romance novel. This was published this year in 2018 by Sourcebooks Casablanca. And it has an average rating of 4.52 stars on Goodreads. I only gave it 3 stars, so I am obviously the outsider on this one. My issue was both of the stories were just lackluster. I didn't think anything was spectacular about them. The first one was about a woman who is a reporter, and in order to keep her job, she has been tasked with getting this interview with this very famous author who is also a recluse. And the storyline mimicked far too much to Exclusively Yours by Shannon Stacy to me, which is one of my favorite books. I not that I don't enjoy that plot. I thought it was a lot of fun and really creative, but I read it before, and I read it when it was done far better. The other thing was that I didn't like about this story was that the male lead, and I don't want to give too much away in case you want to read it, he essentially stalked this woman in a way and demanded that she be the one to give this interview. And it was just a little creepy to me. That story on its own, I gave 2.5 stars to. The other story, A Touch of Heaven, was a little bit more enjoyable. I gave that one 3.5 stars. If you want, just go ahead and just pick up that book. You know, it's up to you. If you want to read the first one, go for it. You know, like, I didn't hate it. Far from loved it. But the second one is... like I said, I enjoyed it a lot more. It was a little bit more, the premise of it was kind of fun. It's about a mother and daughter, and the mother is shopping in like a Home Depot, Lowe's kind of store, and she gets stopped by these people who have this TV show very similar to Extreme Makeover Home Edition, where they come in and redo your house. Well, the mother is looking to sell the house, so she thinks this is going to be great. So they won this, you know, contest or whatever that they didn't actually enter. Somebody just approached them in the store. So, you know, of course, it's a younger guy, you know, who has the show, and him and the daughter develop a relationship, and it goes from there. It was a super cute premise. You know, again, nothing that blew me out of the water. It wasn't super fantastic, but it was a highly enjoyable read. And yeah, you know, I recommend that one. Not so much the first one, but I do absolutely recommend the second one. The next book I finished was another one of the books that I am reading for my Back to My Childhood books, and that is Dawn on the Coast by Anne M. Martin, middle grade fiction. This is the Babysitter's Club book number 23. It was published in 1989 by Scholastic. Average rating of 3.64 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 4 stars. Generally, my Back to My Childhood books get about 3 to 3.5 stars. They're average reads for me. They're nothing absolutely spectacular. This one I gave 4 stars to only for the sole fact that it is the very first Babysitter's Club book that I ever read. So it still holds a special place in my heart as being my favorite, or one of my favorites, just because it's the one, this is the book I really think that got me into reading. I read when I was a kid before I got these books, but I wasn't the reader that I am now. Like, I didn't really jump into reading until I started to read these ones. And this book and the next 2 were gifted to me by my dad. When I was about 8 or 9, and it must have been, because this came out in 89, so I would have been 10. So yeah, so when I was 10, and yeah, again, it holds a special place in my heart, so it's always going to rank a little bit higher. It's about Dawn, who lives in Connecticut, and her parents are divorced, and she goes back to California for spring break, and she has to decide, you know, she kind of wants to stay in California, and she needs to decide, is she going to stay or is she going to come back home? So yeah, it's a really cute, fun story. It's the Babysitter's Club. I just love these books so much. The next one, for a complete change of pace, is one that I read actually for Nonfiction November, and that is The Last Castle by Denise Kieran. This is the epic story of love, loss, and American royalty in the nation's largest home. That's the little subtitle. Nonfiction historical, obviously. Narrated on audio by the author. Published in 2017 by Touchstone. Has an average rating of 3.68 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4 stars. I loved this. I love history. And Biltmore, you know, I've heard about it. I used to watch that television show back when I was younger called America's Castles. And I remember them featuring the Biltmore several times and just being enthralled by it. Like, the nation's largest home. That's insane. And the book was really good. It traced the history of the building of the home and also the history of the Vanderbilt family, who, it was George Vanderbilt who built the home, and then it was him and his wife Edith who lived in it. And, you know, not just the history of the building of the house, but what happened afterward. What happened, you know, after George passed away, you know, and to his daughter who inherited the home and the land, this huge amount of land is it Asheville, North Carolina? Really, really interesting. A lot of talk about the Forestry Service because he was instrumental in getting that started. Highly entertaining book if you are at all interested in American history. You know, it's one of those niche bits of history, not a broad subject, but still highly enjoyable. And it was really, really fun on audio. I mean, the author did a good enough job narrating it. You know, it was just a nonfiction. It's not like any acting, you know, voice acting had to be done. So she did a good enough job. You know, it wasn't super fantastic, but hey, I enjoyed it. The next one was Sweet Dreams Baby by C.J. Carmichael. This is another contemporary romance novel. Book number 12, the 12th and final book in the Love at the Chocolate Shop series. This was published in 2017 by Tool Publishing. It has an average rating of 4.17 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is one that you followed Portia, our main character's story right from book number 1. You meet her in the first book, and, you know, you kind of get bits and pieces of her story. She's pregnant, and then she ends up having the baby. So now she's got the baby, and the baby's father has come back into her life. So this is a great, very, very sweet second chance romance. This entire series is adorable. These are sweet romances, meaning there is no adult content in any of these at all. There is stuff that's alluded to, but there is nothing graphic. So if, you know, you shy away from that, you know, these might be the kind of books that you might really enjoy. And what I love is that each one is set at a different month. So the entire series runs over the course of a year. And they start in October, and then it runs until September of, you know what I mean? Really, really cute, and I absolutely recommend not just this book, but the whole series. The next book I finished was Wicked Deeds by Heather Graham. This is a paranormal romance. It is book number 23 in the Crew of Hunters series, narrated on audio by the amazing Luke Daniels. I just love his narration on these. Published in 2017 by Mira. An average rating of 4.01 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4 stars. You guys know I love my crew of hunters and I love my Heather Graham. This one was really fun. It takes place in Baltimore, Maryland, and our main characters who are investigating some deaths that are taking place at this restaurant, this upscale restaurant in Baltimore called the Ravens, something to do with the Raven. But the people are kind of being not murdered but left in ways reminiscent to stories by Edgar Allan Poe. And Mr. Poe is actually a secondary character in this story. His ghost assists the crew of hunters in you know, solving the case. Really interesting, really fun. If you are a fan of Edgar Allan Poe and his work, you might really enjoy this one. I have only ever read The Raven, which I think is the one that most people know. So someone who has read Poe might get a little bit more out of it than I did. But yeah, still highly enjoyable, and the Crew of Hunters books are just so much fun, and I recommend them every chance I get. Next up is another NetGalley book, and that is Do You Feel It Too by Nicola Rendell. This is a contemporary romance novel. It was published in 2018 by Montlake Romance. An average rating of 4.32 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 4 stars. This one was fun. My one drawback from this one, I really don't like that cover. I'm sorry. I don't understand what's going on, for one thing. But I'm not a fan of the cover. But that's besides the point. The story itself was really cute. It's about a man who has a television show where he kind of is a ghost hunter. The story is about, not the story, his TV show is about him debunking, like, phenomenon and stuff like that. Like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank. Not extraterrestrial, but, you know, like weird things that go bump in the night, you know, the Bigfoot, stuff like that. His whole purpose of his TV show is to debunk. And now he's in Savannah, Georgia, because it is supposed to be one of the most haunted cities in the U.S. And he ends up meeting our main character. I think her name is Lily. And the two of them develop a relationship. He's only in town for a short period of time while he's kind of filming this show, and they decide on a no strings attached affair. And of course, then one thing leads to another. They end up falling for each other. It was really, really cute. I really enjoyed it. If you like a good, very, very, very steamy contemporary romance, go ahead and pick this one up. So fair warning, there is a lot of adult content in this book. But it was still really enjoyable. You know, like I always say, but as if I don't, it's fine. It doesn't bother me. But I know that there are some people who try and shy away from that in reading. So that's why I always like to mention the amount of adult content, if at all possible. But yeah, if I don't tend to mention it, it just means it's average. Like there is some in there, but it's nothing, you know, it's not, you know, tipping the scales one way or the other. So yeah. But again, highly enjoyable, and I really liked it. And the last book that I finished, I think I finished this one on the 15th, was Surrendering to the Sheriff by Dolores Fossen. This is another romantic suspense novel. Book number 7 in the Sweetwater Ranch series. Harlequin Intrigue number 1575. Narrated on audio by Adam Wiener. This is actually part of the Audible Romance package. Only the last 2 books in the Sweetwater Ranch series are available on audio. It's not like they're just available on the Audible Romance package, but at all. Those are the only 2 books available. Published in 2015 by Harlequin. Average rating of 4.05 stars on Goodreads. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I like this one. This is part of a continuing story. The Sweetwater Ranch series is one that you almost need to read in order to really get the full effect of what the author has done. Dolores Fossen is the only writer for this series. Sometimes you get a lot of these miniseries through Harlequin, and what I really like about them is that there are different authors who write each different book, so it makes it a little bit more fun. But in this one, it's only Dolores Fossen, and the whole overarching storyline running through all of the books. There are 8 books in total in the series. I will be reading the next book before the end of this month. And there was a murder 20 some odd years ago. A gentleman was murdered, and his the woman he was having an affair with, an alleged affair with, was kind of like, a finger was pointed at her that she was the murderer. Well, instead of like going to trial and trying to claim her innocence, she went on the run. and now she's back in town and has been arrested. So that's kind of like what's overarching throughout all of these books. In this story, it is the story of Jules' much younger sister Kendall and her ex, and the two of them kind of had a one-night stand. Of course, she's now pregnant, and someone is after her, hoping that if they can silence her, then they can silence her sister from testifying. Jewel, who's the one who's being told that she's the murderer. And yeah, you know, it's fun. You know, these are not anything overtly, you know, it's not one that I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got to go out and read. But they are still absolutely highly enjoyable. If you like, and they're very quick books. They're right around 200 pages a piece. So if you're interested, go ahead and pick them up because they are a lot of fun. And yeah, I absolutely recommend them. So anyway, guys, that is it for this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. Or, you know, what was your favorite book that you read in the first half of November? I'd love to know. And I'll talk to you guys all in my next video. Until then, take care. Happy reading, everybody. Bye.